Hey everyone, it's Michael Kikle. I hope you're doing well today. I finally have finished reviewing, whether it be lightheartedly or viciously sometimes, all of the Dragon Ball movies from the OG, Dragon Ball Day, all the way through Z and then GT's one movie, and the one film that was styled like it, and then the Super films, which I just finished up, like I said. It's all done. I didn't realize growing up and even now over the recent years that there are now currently from Dragon Ball Curse of the Blood Rubies, the original first ever movie from Dragon Ball, all the way up to Dragon Ball Super Superhero, there are 25 movies. That's crazy to me. So anyway, I'm going to try to make this ranking video from worst to best, mind you, from all 25 down to 1. I'm going to talk about them and rank them out in my personal favorites. Now, mind you, I saw many of these, mainly the Z films and the GT movie, over and over and over again on VHS tape and clamshells and stuff like that. This will also include the TV specials, not like the small, 30-minute things that have come out in recent years. This is just the big 45 to whatever length, hour and a half, hour 45 minute, 2 hour long run times on these films, but they won't involve the shorts, like I said, whether they're official or not. I know there's like a Bardock short out there that I didn't cover for these review series things because it was just a short that came out post Wrath of the Dragon and whatever. Anyway, so this will also include the one official live action film, Dragon Ball Evolution, and I'm going to tell you out front, not only about Evolution, but just many of these films. There are many that the fandom, for whatever reason, especially people my age that grew up on the American English dub with Sean Schemmel and Christopher Sabat, for the English dub, which is how I watched every single one of these movies, by the way, because I'm a dub guy. I don't like dubstep, though. So, that was a terrible joke. I'm sorry. I will jump off a cliff as soon as the video is done. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead and make it clear that I'm going to include some things that people are not going to be happy about when it comes to ranking these out, because I do not have the traditional English dub watcher ranking of these movies, and that includes for Evolution. My placement of many of these films are probably going to piss people off, so I just want to give you the heads up on that, because you may very well be one of them. So let's start off at the bottom of the list, as a hardcore Dragon Ball Z fan mainly, and let's rank them out. Like I said, the TV shows are not included, though. Just the movies. So, bottom of the list, number 25 for me is Curse of the Blood Rubies, which is the OG first ever Dragon Ball film. Now, I said in my review, this is really the first time they're kind of making something like this. They basically take episodes of the TV show, re-edit them a certain way, add some stuff in, like the villain, and I was not into it. I was not feeling it. It had its moments that it was kind of cool. The best thing about the particular film we're talking about here, Curse of the Blood Rubies, was the animation, not the voice acting, not even so much the sound effects. The intro to Goku and him meeting his different friends like Bulma was kind of cool. I love the intro of Yamcha and Oolong. I never knew anything about Oolong, didn't realize he was kind of like a Nazi or something. It was very strange once upon a time in the Dragon Ball fandom. But mind you, I've never seen the Dragon Ball show, and I've heard that this movie doesn't hold up compared to what the show or anime did back in the day, or even the manga for that matter, which I haven't read the Dragon Ball manga either. So I'm hoping all of that stuff will be a massive improvement on what this movie was. This is not a horrible movie, but I don't think it's a good film. I think it's more on the border of being a bad film than a good movie, to be honest with you. Mainly because of the things I just pointed out. And very much like the next entry on my list, I feel like it has quite a bit the same problem as this movie, which I guess we'll go ahead and move on. Number 24 is the second ever Dragon Ball film, Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle. Do I like the villain, who is basically Count Dracula Satan, called Count Lucifer, by the way? Yeah, that's the best thing about the movie. Not the voice acting, not really anything else but the animation. That stuff is great, the character art is great, the introduction of Krillin is great. I think this is a more humorous film in some ways that can be worse and can be better, and I think mostly better, than the previous film, Curse of the Blood Rubies. And I think this one and the next movie, Mystical Adventure, actually have nothing but episodes of the Dragon Ball anime, re-edited once again. Maybe some stuff added in, maybe not. I don't know, because I'm not a hardcore Dedekey. But it seems to me like this movie just slightly improves in some ways. Maybe it's the Krillin thing. I do not like the voice actor they had for Krillin in this. But the animation, like I said, was pretty cool. The style of the art was done very well for this movie. And in that respect, Curse of the Blood Rubies and Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle are very nice to look at, despite, in my opinion, being boring and kind of lame, to be honest. Like I said, I'm more of a Dragon Ball Z fan, and even a GT and Super fan too, even though I'm newer to Super, compared to the OG Dragon Ball, which I haven't watched. So that's kind of an explanation for why I feel the way I feel. That's not to say in the future these films, these bottom two on my list already, which probably pissed a lot of people off, won't rise in my popularity, in my opinion. Probably people are wondering why Evolution is not at the bottom of the list. And like I said, a lot of this review series is going to be, well, ranking, I guess, for these movies, is based around not only my nostalgia and my love of these films, but also the exposure to some, like these Dragon Ball films I'd never seen, and also the entertainment value. That's really how I rank out my movies and rate my movies and stuff when I individually review them. If I'm not impressed, there's no point for me to rave about something. So I'm not going to pretend that way. I get more enjoyment out of things like Dragon Ball Evolution than I do some of these movies, and I think it's fair to say that. It's my rating, and my ranking on top of that, so suck my balls is what I'm trying to tell you. Number 23 on my list is the worst Broly film ever. It's awful. The only thing that puts this above the previous two films on my list are Hercule, who I love quite a bit, 18, who I love quite a bit, Goten and Trunks, who I also enjoy quite a bit, because I grew up on the Majin Buu saga and got to see that premiere on TV here in America. So I like those two. I know there are complaints in the fandom about them being kind of annoying, but I always thought they were fun. I really like those aspects. I hate what they did with Broly in here. He's basically kind of like Venom, and it's terrible. It's a terrible version of Venom. If you ever read a bad comic of the Eddie Brock Venom, well, this is basically what the equivalent of that is, but with Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan himself, who I loved growing up. Never been a fan of this movie at all. Aside from the lead cast, and aside from kind of the sci-fi element, which I always say is part of my favorite part of Dragon Ball movies and stuff. I love things like Return of Cooler and kind of that sci-fi edginess that Lord Slug has as a movie. Even down to World's Strongest, the second Dragon Ball Z film. I really like that sci-fi element that those movies bring to the table, and I think a lot of the time they really work for me, if not for everybody else, because of that sci-fi element that you don't really get very often in Dragon Ball. It's usually more fantasy-like. Bio Broly gets a lot of those things right, and I like kind of the plot ties to the second Broly film, called Second Coming. I think those are interesting. The 18 and Hercule storyline about 18 trying to get her money from Hercule from the end of the Majin Buu tournament when Vegeta killed a bunch of people. All of that stuff is pretty cool. I do like that stuff. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't have my reasons for why I don't put this lower than the previous two films, despite me outright saying in my review for Bio Broly that it is a horrible movie. I mean, it's awful. It's not even that long, and the pacing still drags ass most of the time. It's not really thrilling. I don't really like the solution at the end of the film of how they beat Bio Broly. It's terrible. It's a bad movie, and I think most fans would agree, whether they hate Dragon Ball Super Broly or not, this has to be the worst Broly film for me. I will never like it. The music is not that good even. The animation's really nice to look at. I like it more, since it's the later style of Z, than I do something like Curse of the Blood Rubies or Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle. Number 22 on my list is Dragon Ball Super Superhero, and I can hear the screaming fanboy fake-out shills all over the internet who don't watch my videos. I can't stand this fucking movie. I can't stand it. It's the first and only one to be completely made in CGI animation. It's disrespectful to so many characters like Gohan and Piccolo, despite them being the lead cast of this film. This is not a Goku and Vegeta film, nor do I mind when they're not in these movies. I don't actually hate that. You know, things like Broly's Second Coming is not a horrible mess to me, like a lot of people think it is, despite it being a little sloppy. I don't mind when Goku and Vegeta aren't the lead of the films, and I think Gohan either by the hands of DBGT or the hands of Akira Toriyama when he came back to make Super. Everybody constantly disrespects Gohan, and I think all of the fans, whether you're a dedicated, hardcore, I like Gohan more than Goku type of fan, even if you're like that, I think we can all agree that especially people like myself who like Goku more think that Gohan has been disrespected over and over and over again. It kind of gets tiresome, to be honest with you. But I don't like the villains here. I don't like the fact that this movie and a lot of the Super films in general just keep bringing back old things, like Frieza, like Broly, and remaking him. A lot of Super, as much as I love the anime and think it gets a lot of things right, most of the time, and the manga especially I think is phenomenal, especially the Maro and Granola arcs, I think they're great. But Super most of the time doesn't get things right, I would say, when it comes to the movies especially. Superhero is the biggest offender of that. I think this weird Piccolo having a cell phone thing and Piccolo just being outright stupid, just stupid most of the film. The CGI animation stuff, I bitched tons of times in my reviews for the Super films because of how much they use CGI animation mixed in with hand-drawn. This film looks like they took Fortnite skins of 2D hand-drawn characters and made them into basically what you would call like a VTuber, you know? I hate it. I think it looks awful. It's very colorful and pretty to watch on Blu-ray, let me tell you. I just saw this for the second time ever since it came out in 2022, and I still don't like it. I think that it is possibly, for me, and I know this ranking obviously would say it's the lowest of the Dragon Ball Super films, but I think it might be the worst one compared to the others. The fights in the Dragon Ball Super films feel way too slow. This is the biggest issue of that, I think. The scope and the weird cinematic camera shit was bad in the Dragon Ball Super Broly film. It's really bad here. It really gets distracting here, in my opinion. Dragon Ball Super Superhero, it is not what it should have been. Yeah, you have some kind of debatably weird transformations for Piccolo and Gohan. Yeah, Cell is brought back too for this crap. Red Ribbon Army is brought back for this crap. The film's title, Super Superhero, is lame as shit. This movie is not a completely awful film, nor will I ever say that it's on the level of something like Bio Broly, but it's not a good movie. I stand on that till the day I die. I have a lot of people out there who still try to defend this and the Super movies and act like they're good, and they're just not, man. I just don't see how people can defend those. Despite my interest this time around watching Resurrection F for the first time in many, many, many years. I've only seen it one other time when it came out in like 2015, and this time around that film aged a lot better than I remembered it. It actually is pretty high in my ratings in this ranking video, so hopefully you'll enjoy that if you're a big Resurrection F fan. But the Super films are not great, in my opinion, and this is probably the weakest of them, to be honest with you. Number 21 on my list is Battle of Gods, which is technically the first Dragon Ball Super film, but it's also a next-to-last Dragon Ball Z film, because Resurrection F is the final Dragon Ball Z film, at least right now. Dragon Ball Z, Battle of Gods, was the first film to come out in ages. It was the first product. We had it before the manga, we had it before the Dragon Ball Super manga, excuse me. We had it as a reaction from Akira Toriyama's heartbreak over what Dragon Ball Evolution had done. And it had been almost, I think, closer to almost 20 years since Dragon Ball had ended. I think Wrath of the Dragon was like 97 or something. And 2009 we got Evolution. And that was pretty rough, man. And you may still be wondering, by the way, where Evolution is in my ranking. I'm sorry, it's higher than these. I just don't like these Dragon Ball Super films. As I said in my review, when Battle of Gods came out, I thought it was so fucking lame. I don't know how people can still defend this, but let me say in its defense, when Dragon Ball Z, or Super, when the anime and the manga remade this story, especially the anime, it did it a lot, it did it so much better. It expanded upon it, and people trashed the Dragon Ball Z OG anime for stretching out things too much. For me, despite it being, 30 episodes of Goku screaming to power up, a lot of the time, or anybody screaming to power up a lot of the time, it made it better. It made you get into the characters' thoughts a lot of the time with other characters observing different fights and whatever, and I loved that. Think of the Super Saiyan 3 transformation against Majin Buu from Goku. I loved hearing what Trunks was thinking at that time. trying to go do his little objectives and whatever. I think the Dragon Ball Z nails it a lot of the time, and when you have something like the super anime, or even the manga, expand out what a film could only do in less than 2 hours, I think that it gets it right most of the time. To be fair, Battle of Gods might be better if I wasn't watching the uncut version. The only version I've ever seen on the DVD that I own, the 2 or 3 times I've seen this movie now, have been uncut version. Never seen the theatrical cut, and I know it's like 20 minutes shorter. So maybe that improves the film or not. To me, the pacing is so slow on here. The fighting at Bulma's birthday party, of all things, and the introduction, of Whis and Beerus doesn't impress me. I just don't... When this film came out, I hated those 2 characters. They've grown on me a lot. I like them a lot now because of the manga, and because of the things you find out from the manga and the anime of Dragon Ball Super. But at the time when Battle of Gods came out, I hated it then, and I was hoping this time around rewatching it now that last year I saw the Super anime from beginning to end for the first time ever, and I loved most of it. After experiencing that, I was hoping that this movie would be better this time around. No, it's not. Between the soundtrack being lame, I will give it the benefit of the doubt the fact that at least the majority, aside from a couple of small parts of like background stuff and whatever, the majority of the film is hand-drawn animation, and it looks good for that. Resurrection F has a little bit more CGI, then Broly has a lot more CGI. Then you have Superhero that's completely CGI, and it looks like shit, in my opinion. I have a lot of complaints, as you can tell, but Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods is kind of a mess, but I will accept it over Superhero. Originally, this was ranked as my worst of all of them, and I think even in my Superhero review I said that I liked that movie more than Battle of Gods, but to be honest with you, I have less complaints about Battle of Gods than I have about Superhero. This is a decent improvement over that, despite it coming out first, but I mean in my ranking. That's what I'm saying. Battle of Gods, I think that Beerus is so lame in this movie, and I think Whis is lame in this movie too. I don't like how they're written. If this movie had come out back in the day when I was a kid, maybe I would have liked it more, but I don't think by much more, to be honest with you. Number 20 on my list is going to break a lot of people's hearts. Dragon Ball Super Broly, the third of the Dragon Ball Super movies, technically, and the first also technically Dragon Ball Super film ever, with that subtitle. I hate what they did with remaking Broly. I just hate it. I don't like that we keep trying to make Broly into a good guy now, with the manga, with the show, all of that stuff, and Superhero has Broly show up for a couple of minutes. I don't like the remaking of that, or the fact that they remade Bardock, the father of Goku's TV special for this movie. I think that was a bad mistake, to be honest with you. A lot of Dragon Ball Super Broly can be okay. It can have moments of making you feel things for Broly, feeling bad about him. But once again, Dragon Ball Super fights are so slow because of the mixing of hand-drawn animation with 3D animation and CGI. It doesn't look good. It's like when you see live-action films try to blend CGI into making a one-shot movie like 1917 or something. It doesn't look right, and it gets in the way of the film itself. Broly, as a movie, has this problem constantly. And when I hear dumbass fanboy shills that I've complained about numerous times trying to act like this movie with the Broly character makes more sense than the OG film back in the day, I could slap a bitch. I could. Because it's like these people watch these movies with their eyes shut, or they've never seen the original film, they just repeat and say over and over again like a fucking parrot what everybody told them to say about that movie. About Broly's motives, his past, his anger towards Goku. All of that stuff is changed up for this movie, and I can't stand it. I just don't like that. But the mixture of those things with the beautiful colors and the decent voice acting for most people, like Sean Schemmel, Christopher Sabat, Vic Mignogna, or whatever his name is, that did the OG Broly voice, and he was fired after this movie for bullshit reasons. I will hold on to that till the day I die. That stuff harms this movie a lot. Some of it's good voice acting and whatever, but the mixture of the CGI stuff really gets distracting. I don't care what fanboy tells me otherwise. They're lying to you. It's distracting. If you didn't grow up on the newer anime that wasn't hand-drawn all the time, If you didn't grow up on things like Ghost in the Shell or Cowboy Bebop, from what I remember of it, there might be some CGI in that because that came out after DBZ. But if you grew up on OG DBZ or Dragon Ball GT and stuff, you're used to the hand-drawn stuff all of the time as an American. If you were around when it was premiering here in the 90s and in the 2000s, those different shows, you're used to that style. Mixing in CGI, to me, doesn't look good, and apparently that's the popular thing to do with anime movies, anime shows now and stuff. Kind of makes me wonder why I don't like the mangas more when it comes to any series that are modern-day production-wise. But anyway, yeah, Super Broly ranks very low for me. I do not like the remaking of him or the remaking almost and the retooling almost of the legendary Super Saiyan myth. I think that stuff sucks balls on this movie, I really do. Maybe I'm being a little harsh to have this so low, and mind you, still underneath Dragon Ball Evolution for me. But I don't get much enjoyment out of these Super films. Originally, if you'd asked me years ago, I would have, without rewatching these, would have told you this was the bottom of the list for me. Not Broly's movie, but the Super films. I'm glad that I gave them another shot because this film improved a little bit more for me, but it also amplified the negatives of this film, so I can't justify having it any higher than my number 20 spot. There are 19 other films that I like way more than this movie, easily, and that includes Evolution. So let's move on to spot number 19. Number 19 for me is Dragon Ball Z Dead Zone, the first ever Dragon Ball Z movie. And I think this takes place before Dragon Ball Z even starts, with the whole Raditz, Saiyan saga, introduction, whatever. And I like the film. I was a huge fan growing up of the Garlic Saga. I still have VHS tapes with the Garlic Saga episodes on them. And I loved it. I always thought it was cool. It's kind of like a weird, kind of like a Dragon Ball Z vampire story. And being a horror fan, I liked that too. It was one of the most horror-based elements of this show, this cartoon I loved. Anime now, I guess we call it. Because we have to be whatever here in America to be popular. I loved that, and I loved Garlic Jr. And they always seemed like these characters had a history with Garlic Jr., and I didn't understand that, because I hadn't seen the original Dragon Ball. I assumed it was all the way back to then, maybe Garlic Sr. stuff, maybe Garlic Jr. was even younger back then. No, Dead Zone was the first time we met Garlic Jr., and I really like him. He's good in this movie. I had never seen this movie growing up, and watching it for the first time years ago when I bought a DVD pack of the first 4 movies or whatever for Dragon Ball Z, I finally got to see this and World's Strongest and Tree of Might, and I thought they kind of varied on quality depending on what we were talking about. But Dead Zone is pretty entertaining for the most part. It's got some cool stuff in there. It's that early Dragon Ball Z, late Dragon Ball animation style. If you like that, you're going to like this movie a lot more than I did. I didn't grow up on that style as much, so I didn't love it, and I still don't love it, as much as a lot of my friends from work do. Like, I got a friend at work who thinks this and Tree of Might are some of the best films to ever come out from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and all of that. It's a good one, for the most part. It ain't great, but it's good. Kind of average, one of the shortest ones. I wouldn't rate it super, super high, but it was cool. It has its moments, man. Not a very long film. I think it's like 40 minutes on the dot. But anyway, yeah, Dead Zone it's fine. But it's got some cool stuff, and I like Garlic Jr. and his henchmen as villains. Number 18 is the third Dragon Ball Z film, Tree of Might. Now, I, like many people, had never seen this growing up, like I said a moment ago about Dead Zone and World's Strongest. I didn't know any of those films existed until probably about 10 years ago. Maybe a little bit less than that, matter of fact. But when I was growing up, I would see a lot of things that would have, like, pictures online of Turles, or Turles, whatever his name is, the villain in here who has all the henchmen, who's trying to grow this Tree of Might. And I didn't know a thing about him. Didn't know why he looked like a dark Goku. Got my answers about this is what the Saiyans were supposed to look like or whatever once upon a time, according to Akira Toriyama. Excuse me, I couldn't say it. And I thought all that stuff was kind of interesting, but overall, Tree of Might is not a great movie. It's very, very, very okay. Just very okay to me. I like it a little bit more than Dead Zone, obviously, because I think the storytelling and pacing are pretty decent in here. It's just not amazing. There's a lot of time wasted in the beginning of this movie about trying to save the forest and stuff, which I think doesn't really fit in as well with everything else going on. The Turles stuff is cool. The henchman fights are cool. I like a lot of that stuff a lot more than in Dead Zone, where it's kind of just Piccolo and Goku teaming up before they became friends, and so on and so on. There's cool stuff in this movie that I think makes it way more watchable than Dead Zone sometimes. Despite the fights not being amazing, they are better than something like the Super movies. So that may be a harsh cut to hear for you young normie fans, but take it, bitch. Number 17 on my list is Dragon Ball Evolution, the first ever only official version. Official is the key word here. There were some other Dragon Ball movies adapted to live action from other countries that were not official, but this is the first ever official Akira Toriyama, at first, supporting movie, and it was a mess. It was a giant mess, and I do think I find it, because it's such a mess and because of how bad it is as an overall movie, I like it more than everything I just talked about. I like Tree of Might, I like Dead Zone, I think they're good movies for the most part. I like this more because it's a so bad it's good movie for me. I can't see how people can't watch this and not smile to themselves, not laugh a little, not cackle a little at how bad and misunderstood this project is. How bad it misunderstands Dragon Ball, I guess, is what I'm really trying to say here. It is so sloppily put together, it's horribly written, it's directed by the guy who did Final Destination 1 and helped create the franchise for that matter, and Final Destination 3. Everything that was changed up for this film, and how it originally started with like a $30 million budget, which was huge at the time, and, or was it 100 million? 300 million, something like that. It dropped down to a horrific budget number that was so bad that day one, James Marsters, and Chow Yun-fat, who played Master Roshi, tried their damnedest to get out of this project because of how abysmal it seemed from day one. They still comment and talk about this movie to this day. You had Justin Chatwin, who looks like a pixie, you know? He looks like a human brought to life Tinkerbell pixie, and he's bad in it. And I don't blame him because the script's fucking terrible. It's like this high school romance thing. Goku doesn't have a tail. There's this weird modification of King Piccolo's history and the Ozaru form and this weird legend they build around that. It is absolutely awful. And I think personally the worst offender of this movie is the sound design. They don't use almost any of the sound effects at all, most of the time, from the show and anime that are iconic. People can hear certain sound bites from that show, and they know where it's from. They took all of that out. If they make a Kamehameha wave, yeah, the scene itself might look kind of cool. If you added in the Kamehameha sound effect from the animes and stuff, it would probably be a lot better. But instead, no, you get fucking air whooshing, like a fan passing back and forth across the room in your office day-to-day life. It's horrible. It is just a shockingly awful film. And you should probably say, why is it not ranked lower? Well, like I said, this review series, this rating video here, ranking video here, is mostly about what I find an entertainment value amongst the different entries of these movies. What I consider to be the best, not what is technically the best. If you were doing a technical review, this would probably be at the bottom of all of them because it's not even an animated movie. The CGI even looks terrible for the animation portion of it, if you do want to say that. But I have to tell you, when it comes to entertainment value and how much I laugh, or in this case, mean-spiritedly cackle at how bad a movie is, Evolution is a fun, bad movie. It's a fun, horrible, fucking terrible movie that I have a good time watching every time I've ever seen it. I've seen it more than things like Tree of Might and Dead Zone because I think it's so bad it's good, and I can't help but watch it. I loved it when it first came out because of how bad it was. As a hardcore Z fan, I can tell you, it's shockingly bad. Like, shockingly. You haven't seen anything like this, and when I hear people complain about their video game movie adaptations, like the original Super Mario Brothers or the Resident Evil films, bitch, you don't know anything until you've been a Dragon Ball fan and had to see Evolution hit the screens in 2009. So anyway, moving along to the next film, yeah, I can hear the screaming out there like Obi-Wan when Alderaan was killed. My number 16 pick is going to be Path to Power, which is basically a Dragon Ball throwback, remake, whatever, of not only the original Curse of the Blood Rubies, but it includes the Pilaf stuff from the original episodes that movie remade, and edited in and chunked up and whatever. Path to Power was really charming. I had never seen it before, never even heard about it until I did this review series, and I had to kind of make a list of everything that was out there. And overall, it's styled with the art, because of a release and the time it came out, in the Dragon Ball GT art style, whatever. I mean, Goku's even wearing the same gi, whatever it's called, that he wore in Dragon Ball GT. And I didn't hate that. I thought that was kind of cool, too. We have the original, for me, Goku kid voice that I always liked. The same chick who played Gohan in the Dragon Ball Z when I was a kid. And I think all of that worked really well for me compared to anything else I had really seen in the previous Dragon Ball films. The only one I like more than Path to Power, because obviously the first two films are at the bottom of this list of ranking, was Mystical Adventure. I thought Mystical Adventure was a lot better than Path to Power and a lot better than the other ones. I'm kind of surprised people don't like that one as much. Matter of fact, I got like 3 dislikes the day of release of that review for Mystical Adventures, so I don't know. I guess people in the fandom hate that movie. I don't know why, but apparently they do. But Path to Power was kind of fun. It wasn't super crazy, but it was adventurous and it was nice. And it had a little bit of a heart and soul to it that I didn't see in the first 2 films. And this film has a little bit of that heart and soul too that I thought was worth watching it for. So Path to Power was not that bad. I didn't expect it to be this high on the list. Especially because I'm a hardcore Z guy and not an OG Dragon Ball guy, since I haven't seen that show before much. But, yeah. Number 15, Wrath of the Dragon, which is for a long time until Battle of Gods in 2013, the final Dragon Ball Z film for a very long time. And you had things included in here like the story of how Kid Trunks would get his sword for future Trunks arc and whatever. Kinda not, you know? Tapion was cool. I really liked him. I liked his backstory and whatever. But the film overall feels kind of empty, a little bit. I like the art style and stuff even more than I liked Path to Power's art style. It was kind of that late Dragon Ball Z, but with an edge to it. And I dug that. It reminded me of the days of Bojack Unbound and Broly, Legendary Super Saiyan, or Broly 1, whatever we're calling that movie now. It had a lot of things like that I really enjoyed. I wish it had like a better soundtrack and stuff, though. It was fine. It was very, very, very fine. It had its moments, and that's about it. It's kind of lame. It's kind of a lame story, but it was fine. It was enjoyable to watch, I guess. We got things like Super Saiyan 3 in there, which was cool. And it was fine. Number 14 is World's Strongest, the second ever Dragon Ball Z film. This is a movie that I have only seen twice now. And I gotta tell you, it improved even more this time around, because the first time I saw this film was also surrounded by seeing Dead Zone for the first time, and then Tree of Might after it for the first time. And none of the 3 I really love that much, to be honest with you. They're fine, they're cool, they have their moments, they're kind of weak compared to what I love from Dragon Ball Z and whatnot, but I will say the art style for this movie very much improves it, and I love, like I said, the sci-fi elements of Dragon Ball when it does it, especially Dragon Ball Z, when you're talking about things like Return of Cooler, where it's a very sci-fi type of movie, and not just an adventure fantasy series, and I really like that a lot of the time. This movie really hits that note too. Dr. Wheelio was kind of a threatening villain, at the time of release of this, before Super Saiyan, before, I think this was before Kaioken, if I'm remembering correctly. I haven't seen this film in like a month, but World's Strongest is a fine little treat if you haven't seen it before. It's got some good stuff in there. I like kind of the love in here for Master Roshi. That's pretty cool. Number 13 is the second Dragon Ball Super film, Resurrection F. Now, I've said before, in my previous reviews, in the comments I made earlier, obviously, for Dragon Ball Super movies, Resurrection F climbed the ladder quite a bit for me this time around. It's a lot better than I remember it being. I've only seen it one other time before this viewing for these reviews, and it was a lot better. The first time I saw it, didn't like it, just like I didn't like Battle of Gods. I always thought it was a little bit of an improvement over Battle of Gods. I did not realize I would put it as high as I did this time around for this ranking, even above World's Strongest, which I remember liking more because of the art style and stuff. But Resurrection F was kind of, it was kind of neat. It had some good things in there. Obviously, Super Saiyan Blue, I think we can all agree, at least looks better than Super Saiyan God, you know? I don't like the weird cop-out ending. I think that's some bullshit. It kind of introduces time travel to Dragon Ball Z, and then Dragon Ball Xenoverse, the video game, kind of utilizes that a little bit too, if you consider that to be canon or not. I don't know, but some people do, because people are always going to fight about canon, because people are stupid. But the time travel thing is, I hate that for any media. I don't care if it's Spider-Man, I don't care if it's Star Wars, Star Trek, or in this case, Dragon Ball. It's always a bad idea. Despite that terrible ending, I think the movie overall has some good stuff in there. The resurrection of Frieza himself, aside from the goofy-ass title, is kind of neat, and I like the Golden Frieza form. I think that the ego to Frieza and the way Goku and Vegeta figure that out very early on is kind of cool. So, it's got some things to offer, man. I do recommend this, and I do think overall it's kind of a good movie, even though it's got some problems in there, heavy problems that I think do kind of ruin it. Like again, I've said this a million times, the hand-drawn animation mixed with CGI animation will never impress me. I think it's always going to look bad no matter what movie it's in, and this is another case for that. My number 12 is Dragon Ball Mystical Adventure, the third ever Dragon Ball franchise movie. Now, of course, like the previous two films, Curse of the Blood Rubies and Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle, I'm pretty sure, if I had to bet, I did not do any research about this one, I'm pretty sure this is a bunch of episodes, once again, compiled into a movie. But I think this one's a lot more fluent. I think the acting is better. I think the animation's better than the previous two. Obviously, if it's just, taking, episodes and editing them together into something new. But I could be wrong about that, so don't hold me to that. But Mystical Adventure, like I said a moment ago, I got a lot of hate and 3 downvotes on that movie review for this film. I thought it was solid. I thought Mystical Adventure had a lot to offer. I can't believe that maybe there are people out there actively looking for reviews for Dragon Ball that don't like this movie. I don't know why. I think it's good. I like the father and son that are Indians. I like Goku. I love Master Roshi in here and Krillin and everybody. I thought it was pretty fun overall as a movie. I can't believe that there's some kind of, I guess, disparaging discourse around this movie. That's wild to me. But Mystical Adventure was fun, man. It was kind of I don't know how to explain it. It was a better adventure than anything I've seen from Dragon Ball, the original series, I mean. Haven't read the manga, haven't seen the original anime, if I had to restate that again. But this was really nice. This is something that if this was actual episodes without anything added in too much, then I might like the OG Dragon Ball show more. I don't know. But this was good, and I recommend it highly if you haven't seen it before. Mystical Adventure had a lot to offer, and like I said, the animation was beautiful looking, man. Number 11 is Broly's Second Coming for me. Now, this is Broly 2, obviously by the title, and I always thought it was kind of cool. I always thought it was, a pretty solid flick. I grew up watching this film just like I did a lot of the VHS clamshells I had for, Lord Slug and the OG Broly film, and I always liked it a lot. I thought originally it was going to be in my top 10. It just slightly got bumped out by the next movie above it that I'm going to talk about in a moment, obviously at spot number 10. But Second Coming's biggest flaw is the first half of the film, with Videl and Goten and Trunks arguing, fighting, this whole village cult thing going on. I didn't like any of that. I felt like it got in the way and kind of made the film trip over its own feet. But when you get to Broly coming back, and you get to how Goten and Trunks and Videl have no reason at all not to be slaughtered immediately by Broly, when Gohan shows up, the film immediately improves. Immediately to me. It gets way more fun to watch. And I think by the end of it, it really kind of salvaged a kind of, frankly, mediocre movie that kind of turns into a decent watch, a good movie even. Maybe Mystical Adventure should have been above this to most people. I did not grow up on Mystical Adventure, and of course this ranking is kind of a mixture of nostalgia and things that I loved and things that I love more than things that are actually quality made, possibly better. I love the art style of the film too. I think it looks good. So Second Coming has its flaws heavily, like I said, especially that first half of the movie. But I don't think it kills this film for me. It just doesn't. That's why it ranks so high for me. Anyway, moving along. Now we're getting into the top 10, and this one, like I said, just kind of bumped Second Coming out of the way. It's a TV special, the other one after Bardock, the father of Goku, History of Trunks. Now, I love Trunks, and I loved when I was growing up the commercials for this movie, and I never could find it to watch, and I eventually got to see it on YouTube and was not impressed, and eventually I bought a Blu-ray copy with Bardock, the father of Goku in it as well. And I grew up on my VHS copy of Bardock, the father of Goku, and thought it was great, but this movie never impressed me that much. This viewing, I do think, for me, I think quality-wise, the look of it, man, the art is amazing in this film. I just wish the editing wasn't so panicked, you know. It clearly was supposed to be an hour long to an hour and 10 minutes long, and they chopped out so much of it. You can feel that when you watch it as a TV special. It's very clear to me it is a rush job. But I think at the end of the day, if I'm telling you that I like this less than Broly's Second Coming, I would be lying to you. I think it was more enjoyable. I think the stuff about future Trunks before he comes back in time to try to give Goku his medicine after the Frieza saga and whatever, I think all of that is really cool. I think future Trunks himself starts out a little bit younger. Watching him grow up a little bit more is really good. I wish we had this version of future Gohan, even though I like the one we got during the Majin Buu saga. That version of Gohan I really love, from the hairstyle to how absolutely humongous he is. He's huge. He's taller than Goku. He's taller than most of the adults in Dragon Ball Z in the regular timeline. He's enormous. His musculature is enormous. I just think he looked so badass. And I wish we still had that future Gohan. I know they brought him back for like Dragon Ball Heroes or Super Dragon Ball Heroes, whatever that little anime promotional tool is for that video game in Japan. But getting to see him back and reuniting with Trunks was kind of cool in that little anime thing. But that's another story for another day. I really like that version of Gohan, and I like this version of Trunks too, even though it's not the cool sword-wielding Trunks that we already knew before this came out. But it's an apocalypse movie, which is kind of nice. And I just like all those elements more than I think at the end of the day, Broly's Second Coming. So that's how I kind of justify putting it up so high. Again, in my top 10. We're in the top 10 now. And I think this deserves where it is. I think there's a lot of fans out there that would rank this way higher than I would. But I don't know. It's just me. I wish I could have seen this and actually grown up on it, you know? But I didn't, fortunately, have that fortune. I don't know. Alright, this pick right here is going to give me a lot of shit. I can feel it out there like Alderaan blowing up. And that is, number 9 is Dragon Ball GT's only movie, A Hero's Legacy. Yeah, this is about a kid named Goku Jr. He's like the great-great-grandson of Goku. Pan's grandson, matter of fact. Look, I think people are unfair to this movie. I think it has a lot of heart and a lot of soul. I think it's a very sweet film for what it is. And I think it had a lot of goals that people really didn't appreciate. This is trying to mix kind of a nice little heartwarming message about a boy who is sad, who cries way too much. I agree with everybody that complains about that with Goku Jr. You're 100% right. Basically, this is about a young boy having to go on a big adventure by himself at first, and then having to team up with his bully from school. He's a bullied kid. His grandma, Pan, is sick and she's dying. And he is all by himself. He has no family. His parents are apparently gone. And even saying that out loud kind of puts a chill down my spine, because I just can't imagine living in a world where you are by yourself. And if that's you out there, I feel sorry for you. You know, no pity, but I'm just sorry for you. That really hits me in a way. I don't know what it is about that loneliness that it really depicts as a movie, but Hero's Legacy really gets it right. I just wish he wasn't Goku Jr. I wish he was some other character that was a Saiyan, or half Saiyan, or what would he be, like a fifth of a Saiyan, sixth of a Saiyan? I don't know. Whatever his heritage would be, he's like the grandson of Gohan, for God's sake. I mean, or I guess the great-grandson? Anyway, everybody's basically dead. All the Z fighters are gone. It's just kind of Goku Jr. and Pan, and that's all we know. And I don't hate Dragon Ball GT like a lot of people do. I think it's definitely flawed, but I grew up on that, and I loved it just as much as I loved Z once upon a time. Not now, but once upon a time I did. And this movie, to me, still maintains a great, great quality to it. I just think, like I said in my review, Goku Jr. being able to go Super Saiyan is bullshit. I don't think that should have been in this movie. I think if you had made some sequels and he really went through even more than he went through in this movie, maybe it would have made more sense. I do not like him being able to go Super Saiyan here. It's very much the same critique that I have, that for some reason I'm willing to forgive the Majin Buu saga for with Goten and Trunks. I don't know why, but it feels different here. It feels like it's more justified here than it is in Majin Buu saga, but I don't know. We can talk about that down in the comments too, if you want. But this movie, I think, is really great. I think it has a lot of good stuff in it that just make it even better. The Dragon Ball GT English dub music and soundtrack, I think, is always a treat. I still own this movie on DVD from when I was a kid. That's what I watched it with this time. Apparently, it comes in the box set for the Dragon Ball GT show, which is good because I think a lot of people have missed this movie and never seen it before. But if you're a fan of GT, or even if you're not, I think it's good and I think it's worth your time for sure. That's why it ranks so high for me. Number 8 for me is Dragon Ball Z Cooler's Revenge, the first time we ever met Frieza's brother, who never made it into the show, which was kind of a bummer. I don't think King Cold ever mentioned him in the TV show with Frieza getting killed by Trunks after he was already like a cyborg and shit. Cooler's Revenge is a nice little camping fight movie, and I always liked it a lot. When I was a kid, I loved it way more. I always thought it was one of the best of the best. Return of Cooler, obviously, I think most people agree is better. But as a kid, I loved this film, and I still think it's really good, man. I think it's a good watch. Has a lot of good fighting and action until Goku gets knocked out for like 20 minutes of the 45-minute runtime. But it's cool. It's a lot of cool stuff in this film. It's the first one we ever got after Frieza Saga where we had Super Saiyan pop up in a movie. And it was good. I liked it. I think everybody was good for the voice acting and stuff. The music was still pretty good. It's a solid flick, man. Number 7, Fusion Reborn, the next to last, right before Wrath of the Dragon, Dragon Ball Z movie. Now, Fusion Reborn, I watched this time on a DVD that I own also, since I was a kid, and I had friends and I who would have sleepovers that would watch this movie over and over and over again. Yeah, it's on the goofier side with the whole Hitler coming back to life and the dead being resurrected and how it plays along with that, but it's very much Akira Toriyama in that way. I know he wasn't heavily involved in the films, but this film feels like if he ever was, he was probably involved with this one. It has a great sense of humor. Janemba, I think, is a fantastic villain when he actually transforms into the pink and orange Janemba that we all know. He's really good there at that point. I think Goku and Pikkon are great here as a team. I think the first time, really, we ever saw Fusion in a Dragon Ball Z film, not the show, but in the film, was here. It was the first time Gogeta was ever shown. Ever. Not Vegito from Majin Buu Saga, but Gogeta. And I really like that too. There's some really good stuff in this film that I recommend highly. It's a little sloppy sometimes, but overall I think it's a great flick. It's got some really badass stuff, and the way Gogeta kills Janemba at the end of the movie is so unique in Dragon Ball that they even did it again in Dragon Ball GT when they had the Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta years and years and years later. And I love that too. Gogeta's awesome, Goku and Vegeta are great, Janemba's great. This is a good watch, man, if you haven't seen it before. It's not amazing, but it's good. Really good, I think. Number 6 is going to be Super Android 13, which is a very simplistic film, but one that I really enjoy a lot. Maybe this one for most people would rank lower than something like Fusion Reborn, Cooler's Revenge. It really doesn't have a ton of story. It's basically Goku having to go fight a bunch of androids with Trunks and Gohan and Vegeta and Piccolo, obviously. And these are just new Dr. Gero androids. Now, when I was growing up, I loved the Frieza saga, I loved the Saiyan saga, I loved the Majin Buu saga, which was the main one I got to see on TV. Most of the previous stuff I saw through games and VHS tapes. But the Cell saga was really the one that stood out to me, because I grew up as a horror fan, and a lot of the Cell saga is horror, like his tail sucking people out of their clothes and stuff. There was something about that that always appealed to me. He was one of the most iconic villains, Cell. Think of something like the T-1000. He was like the T-1000 of DBZ. for me. You could say that's more Majin Buu, but to me, Majin Buu is like a weird knockoff of like Cell in some ways, but that's another discussion for another day. Super Android 13 overall is just a movie about fighting. If you love Super Saiyans and if you love fighting like I did as a kid, this is the movie for you. And I always loved the moments with this guitar melody that plays in here. It's almost like Dragon Ball GT music before GT even existed, and I love it. It's really good stuff. I watched it on a VHS clamshell once again from my childhood, and it's banging, man. I like it a lot more than I think most people do. I think most people don't like this one, to be honest with you. Especially after Dragon Ball Abridged made fun of it all those years ago. But I think it doesn't give it its due diligence, man. I think it deserves a lot more praise, in my opinion. It's a pretty solid flick. I like it a lot. I think it's a good movie. And for people who defend shit like Battle of Gods and Resurrection F a whole lot, which again, I like that more, and like the Broly super film, for people who defend shit like that so heavily, they seem to always have negative shit to say about this movie, and I don't get it. I think it's really fun. I think it's way more fun than any of the Super movies, obviously because it's so high on my list. But that's just me. I would love to hear what all of you have to say about that pick down in the comments. Number 5 on my list, and yeah, we're in the top 5 now. This is Bardock, the Father of Goku, the OG original TV special, and I love this special. I think it's great. I think it's so close to being perfect. Again, like History of Trunks, the pacing, because of the editing for it being a TV special and not a full-fledged hour and 10-minute long movie, really harms this movie. They chopped it up so much for commercial breaks that it really kind of harms the pacing of the film. But the atmosphere of it, the eeriness, that kind of gloom that lingers over it, and the psychic ability of Bardock after he's hit in the back of the neck, and knowing that Frieza's going to kill all the Saiyans, but not being able to stop it because no one believes him. It's this boy cried wolf type of thing, but not really. It's great. I love it, man. And when I see things like Dragon Ball Super Broly remake it, I still feel insulted by it because I grew up on this. I loved it so much watching it on VHS tape and everything. It's just a magnificent film. And like I said before, it's Akira Toriyama's favorite movie of Dragon Ball. So that should tell you a lot. Really good movie. Recommended highly. From this point on, from part 5 or number 5 on my list and onward, these are what I consider like either the almost masterpieces or the straight out masterpieces. Like the next few, I would say, are the straight out masterpieces of the films for Dragon Ball, and that kind of is something that will always be set in stone for me. But let's move along to number 4. Number 4 on my list is one that I have praised and loved and talked about for ages. Many of you have heard me say it forever. Lord Slug. Dude, Lord Slug is so great. I don't care when I'm watching it, where I watch it. It never gets old. Every person I've ever shown this movie seems to love it. It's a little goofy because of the whistling song that Gohan does and the Piccolo Namekian and stuff. But Lord Slug himself, I love the twists about him. I love the false Super Saiyan thing that Goku does in here. I think it's kind of a weird cop-out, but I still like it a lot. This film offers so much, and I think from the filmmaking to the animation, the incredibly dark-looking art style they picked for this is just magnificent. It's perfect in every way that it could be. I love it. I recommend it so highly if you haven't seen Lord Slug before. It deserves your attention and your respect, bro. My number 3 is going to be Bojack Unbound. This originally was going to be my number 2, and the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't justify it. This is mostly a tournament movie, and I love tournaments and Dragon Ball and Yu Yu Hakusho and all that. For some reason, that appeals to me. I don't know why. But I love it here. I love how this is post Goku dying at the end of the Cell Saga. This is a Gohan movie, but it's a Z Fighter film too. You have Trunks, you have everybody else here, Tien, Piccolo, in a tournament, just having fun, trying to win money against really weak people and animals. And some bad guys, led by a guy named Bojack, show up, and they ruin the day, and it's great. I love it. I think it has so much to offer, from the music to the incredible art style. One of the best art styles around that time, right after Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan 2, that just impresses the hell out of me with the art style and the look of it, and the feel of it overall. The storytelling, pacing, all of that is just fantastic. I love it deeply. So, yeah, Bojack Unbound, I think, is a straight-out masterpiece. I don't think it gets the love that it deserves as a movie. Number 2, Return of Cooler. I love Metacooler. I absolutely do. I remember seeing the commercials back in the day on TV and on VHS for this movie, and I loved it when I got to see it. I still have my VHS tape. It's how I watched it for this time around. This movie, kind of like Bardock, the father of Goku, and Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, give me chills when I watch it. I don't know why, they just do. There's something about it that really creeps me out. I'm terrified of, like, the transhumanism movement. Not trans, obviously, but, like, transhumanism with the robot thing, where they're trying to make humans into robots, and this movie has a lot that it deals with that. If that is a fear for you, like a real general fear, that's a big thing in this movie. Metacooler himself comes back, we don't know how at first. That sci-fi element of this movie is both terrifying for me and my personal fears, but also awesome. I love it. I think it's really amazing for what it's doing. It has so much to offer, from the soundtrack to the Goku and Vegeta stuff. I think, if I remember correctly too, this is the first time Vegeta was in a film for Dragon Ball Z. And he's great. I think all of the performances are great. I think being dedicated to the planet Namek and taking place entirely on Namek is awesome. We don't have a whole lot of the movies not take place on Earth, so this is a really nice change-up for me. I think Return of Cooler, I struggled a lot between this, Bojack Unbound, and Broly 1, Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan, whatever, for my top 3s, because of how much I love these 3 movies so much. This is a masterpiece, and I recommend it highly if you haven't seen it. And finally, we're at number 1, because I'm on a time crunch here. I'm trying to get all this wrapped up under an hour. We'll see how that works out. Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan is my number 1 pick. I think that if anything is the best Dragon Ball villain, the best Dragon Ball movie, for that matter, Z or otherwise, it's this movie. It's amazing, from the art style to the amazing soundtrack with people like Gravity Pool and Pantera is the big one here that really, dude, when the Pantera song hits, holy shit, the chills down my back happen every time. And it's great. I love it. I think that Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan is incredible. People trash the hell out of the film for the most ridiculous reasons. You can usually tell who is going by what the internet told them to say and who's actually seen the movie or actually paid attention to it when they watched it, versus who hasn't when you talk about this movie in the fandom. I don't care if it's on Reddit, I don't care if it's on Twitter, I don't even use Twitter, but I've seen it before in the past. I don't care where it is, it can be a YouTube comments section, and the disrespect to this movie and the original version of Broly that everybody actually loved, it's bullshit. And I think that a lot of people don't call it out like it is. But I think this movie is magnificent. I think everything about it's magnificent, from the performance from Vic Mignogna, whatever the fuck his name is, that played Broly. He's amazing. I think everybody else, Sean Schimmel, Christopher Sabat, everybody involved in this gave 110% because of how special this movie is. And the fact that, like I said earlier, Goku and Vegeta should not have survived this situation. It was a very close call. There is no reason at all that the Z fighters who did survive this should have survived. They were going to die. There was no way they could beat Broly without the kind of Deus Ex Machina that happened at the end of the film. But I still love it. I don't care. I still love it. Even with Goku doing that final punch at the end of the movie, he didn't win that fight. Broly wasn't dead yet. So there's a lot of things to talk about with this movie. And I can't do all that here, obviously. I've already done it for a review. But I think Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan is just fucking perfect in every way possible. Every way that I would want it to be, it is. It's a magnificent watch, and if you haven't seen it before, you owe it to yourself to take the time and actually watch this shit. Even if you like Dragon Ball Super's Broly more, that's fine. But don't be disrespectful to this Broly. This is the one that gave us Broly, and the reason people wanted him canonized to begin with was because of how amazing this movie is. Don't listen to this ridiculous motive bullshit people try to pull when they talk about the OG Broly movie and character. That's a lie. This movie is just amazing in every way. This might be in like the top 10 childhood movies I loved growing up. If I had to rank them out, this would be up there with like things like Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi for me. I think it's a masterpiece, and I couldn't recommend it more if you haven't seen it before. But anyway, that will conclude my ranking of all 25 Dragon Ball films, from the OG series, Z, GT, Super, all of it. And I hope you enjoyed the list. I'm sorry for it to take an hour. I wanted to give you a little commentary on why I was doing this or that. But I hope you had a good time, and I hope you'll recommend the video to some people and subscribe and so on and so on. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. 25 films took a long time to talk about, so forgive me for that. It was different versus like a 10-movie series, you know, or like a 12-movie series like Friday the 13th or something. So anyway, I'm going to move along now. Thank you all for watching, guys, once again. God bless you all. What's your ranking? Put all that down in the comment section down below, excuse me. Or make like a video response, but let me know, because they don't have video response links and stuff anymore on YouTube. I'd love to see that down below and hear your thoughts on everything. And yeah, God bless you guys. Catch you later, and goodbye.